Hello, my name is Jinny Sims. I'm a Member of Parliament in Newton North Delta. I was actually born in India, and in 1962, when I was a little girl, my family emigrated to England. And I grew up in England with my brothers and sisters, did my university in England out of the University of Manchester in England itself, and I became a teacher. Unfortunately, we left England, or fortunately, at a time when things were not going that well politically in England. We had Margaret Thatcher in power, and we decided we would explore some other countries. My husband and I are both teachers, so we came to Canada as teachers under the then point system, and we taught in Quebec for 2 years. After that, our decision was to go back to England, but then we decided we would come across and see the rest of the country. So we traveled across the country with our daughter, Kieran, and were very, very impressed, not only by the people of Canada, but the geography of Canada and the social system in Canada as well. Once we came to BC, we fell in love with BC and decided to stay. So we settled in Nanaimo, where I lived and was a teacher for a number of years, where then I became a president of the local Teachers Association. And then in 2000, I actually moved over to Vancouver once I was elected to be on the executive of the British Columbia Teachers Federation. I did go on to become the president of the British Columbia Teachers Federation, and was privileged to be able to advocate for young students' learning conditions and also for improved education system in BC. I'm really proud to be a teacher. I will always consider myself to be a teacher. It's one of the noblest of professions, and I have so enjoyed working with hundreds and thousands of students over the years. And I see today a real need to reinvest in a major way in public education so that we can build our future, and our future is our children. So we need to invest in them. My father, Bikram Singh Hoti, he emigrated to England 5 years before the rest of the family joined him. My mother, Swaran Kaur Hoti, from the village of Babma, which is near Noormel in the district of Jalandhar in India, made England their new home, and they raised 6 children. And one thing that my father instilled in us was the need to do community service. I think from a very early age I became very, very active, because in those early days there was no such thing as ESL, no such thing as special services in schools. You literally were dropped into a school without any other kids who spoke the language you spoke, and you had to learn English. But as the new immigrants came into England, I often became a letter writer and interpreter for many of them. And that attached me to the community and advocacy in our communities. And that advocacy continued when I became a teacher. One thing I learned when I was teaching is that you cannot be a good teacher just because you know your subject. In order to be a good teacher, you also have to get to know your kids and the communities they live in. You have to raise your voice about poverty, about racism, about sexism, and about all those other issues, because we know that we don't just teach a subject, we teach the whole child. And so as a result, for teachers to be good teachers, they actually have to be social justice activists and have to be engaged in building better and stronger communities outside of the classroom as well. So that's where my activism came from. And I saw in British Columbia a really concerted attack on teachers and on public education. And that made me want to get engaged, because I believe our children are our future and we need to invest in them. It's so easy for our governments to invest in huge banks and give them the tax breaks, or international corporations that make multi-billion-dollar in profits. But it's very difficult for them to invest in our children. And I often give this as an example. To send a person to prison, it actually costs us over $80,000 a year. But to educate a child, we're not even willing to spend $10,000 a year as government. So to me, it's really about government and how they set their priorities. And as I finished my presidency and was working in my dream job at the BCTF as a director of the Professional and Social Issues Division, Jack just did not give up on trying to persuade me to run. And we're very, we miss our leader even today. And Jack had a special heart in everybody's home. And what I found was saying yes to him, because he was very clever. He said to me, "You're always saying, do this for children. So do this for children." So I decided to run federally, because I did not like the way, the direction Canada was going in, whether it was attacks on our advocacy groups, on the women's groups, on overall the changing nature of Canada. It just was not looking like the country that I fell in love with and that I adopted and is now my home. So from there on, I was very lucky that I got elected. The other reason I ran actually goes back to a little story from when I was president. And I remember meeting a young man at the airport, and he came up to me and he said something that was profound and has changed my life. And I was surrounded by media, and he kept walking backwards and forwards. And I actually went up and said, "Young man, I feel you want to say something." He goes, "Yes, I do." And I said, "Well, what is it?" He goes, "When I look at you, I've lived in Canada all my life," he said. "But when I look at you for the first time in my life, I feel proud to be Canadian, and I feel proud to be Indian." And I looked at him and my eyes welled up, and he said, "Because when you speak, I feel there's a place for me here, and I feel proud of the message you carry." And for me, being in politics is more about trying to have an impact on our young people. This is their home. This is where they're either born or they came here. And together we have to make Canada a very strong nation that includes everybody, where nobody feels excluded. So all our institutions, whether it's members of parliament, in the legislature, whether it's the bureaucracy, all of our institutions, teachers, doctors, have to reflect the full diversity of our nation, so that all our children can see themselves reflected in the governance and in the day-to-day life of this beautiful country. So that keeps me going in politics. And I would say right now, I am very, very disturbed with what I have seen with the changes in immigration, for example. They have been so profound that I was struck when an elder recently said to me, "Jinny, what is the difference between now and when the Komagata Maru was turned back 99 years ago? How are the policies today not as racist or as exclusionary as they were then, except it's done with a nicer smile on people's faces?" And he was specifically referring to the family reunification, how difficult it has become for families to be together, even for weddings and funerals. And another young woman in Edmonton once said to me, and that haunts me as well, Canada is my home. And I have built a beautiful, beautiful place here. I'm thankful that I live in Canada, said this lovely young woman. But she said, when I wanted my mother to come and visit, just a visit for a month to see my new home, I was told that she won't go back. Well, my mom is not going to want to live in the cold of Edmonton, she said. She will want to go back. She's got a farm there. She's got other children there. All I wanted her was to visit for a month. And she said, when that got rejected, I kept thinking, is this just my house? Because a home is a place where you should be able to invite your family to have a meal with you. And those are the kind of things that keep me motivated, because Canada is a beautiful country, but we have to make sure that not only immigrants who arrived here 100 or 200 or 300 years ago feel it's their home. We have to make sure that the newcomers who've come in the last 40, 50, 10, 2, or even this year do not feel that this is not their home, and that we are still the same caring and inclusive country for everybody. So my dreams for the future. I have a new file. My new file is employment and social development, and I'm very, very excited about it. I'm excited about it for two reasons. Because the immigrants who've come here, whether they're first generation or whether they're third or whether they just landed yesterday, what they care about is jobs, decent paying jobs. They care about the healthcare. They care about the safety of their communities. And they want to make sure that our resources are used environmentally soundly so that we grow decent paying jobs here. So my focus in the next little while is going to be how to press for those decent paying jobs right here in Canada for people who live in Canada. My other goal is, and I'm not going to be quiet about this one, is that we have to continue to be strong advocates for a strong and inclusionary Canada. I see Canada as a beautiful garden. A garden has many flowers. They have different shapes, different colors, and they all look beautiful together. To me, Canada has the potential to be such a nation, and we have to make sure that we elect governments, we elect people who can go and be our real voice and who can help us to grow a garden where people from all nations with all different faiths, all colors of skin can come here and blossom like a flower garden. That needs to be fed, that needs to be nurtured, and that needs to be looked after. And so my call to everybody is, let's pay attention to what's happening in our Canada, and let's make sure that we make this the most beautiful nation that it has the potential to be. It is, but we still have room for improvement, and we have to stop this wrong-minded, strong-headed direction that the current government is taking us, because our children ask for no less. I've been married for over 41 years. I have a son and a daughter, Kieran and Michael, and my daughter Kieran has given me 3 beautiful grandchildren, Emily, Jacob and Jessica. Family is very, very important to all of us, and I think it's when I think about my family and how important they are to me that I think about all the newcomers who have come to this country who are not able even to have their families visit them for very, very important occasions, and sometimes for very sad occasions as well, like funerals. So, when I look at Canada, Canada used to have such a proud history internationally. We had a stellar reputation as being peace keepers. And we've lost some of that when we lost our place on the National Security Council. And recently, I don't feel we have that same kind of a sway in the world as we used to. I also take a look at what kind of a future I want for my Canada. Not only do I want an inclusive future, I also want us to tackle some of our major issues. We have to address the environmental issues, because if we do not, Mother Earth will not thank us. And all the wealth that we have in this country, there is a way to utilize it. There is a way to utilize it that makes it environmentally sound, but also makes sure that we grow decent paying jobs here. We have to invest in education. We have the brightest kids living here, and many of them have graduated from universities. They can't get decent paying jobs. So the focus has to be on growing the jobs here instead of sending our jobs abroad, either through resources or through other deals. We also have to ensure that we make sure that our young people have the opportunities to follow post-secondary education, and that they don't leave post-secondary education with a debt load that is higher than most of our mortgages were when we bought our homes in the early days. I also want to make sure that the immigration policies that have come into place over the last number of years, that they get readdressed so that we have robust and vibrant immigration policies that are inclusive, that do not prejudice against people, but also that are nation building policies rather than nation dividing policies. The current government has gone into divide and conquer. Our mean-spirited cuts.
Full lights, start sound, camera, action.
BabuKishan's Spotlight.
In your life you have a time to reflect on many things. And one thing I have come to believe is that all our institutions, government and public institutions, have to be secular, so that all our different religions can flourish in this country side by side. And all the different cultures can do the same as well. I was actually born into a Sikh family. I went to an Anglican school. And during my university days, I did study comparative religions as well. So I'm very knowledgeable about all of that. And, spirituality is very, very important to me. But everybody gets their spiritual needs met in many different ways. Some people get it through religion, other people get it through working in the garden, or through walking, through nature. And I'm one of these people that absolutely believes that there are great teachings from all around, from all different religions, that teach us a lot about how to live. And also Mother Nature teaches us a lot as well. So I'm a great believer in spirituality and being connected with the spiritual side of yourself as well, because you have to nurture that as much as your physical side. And when I look into the future now, what kind of challenges do I see ahead for all of us, my vision for all of us? I would say that Canada has the potential and is a great nation. However, over the last number of years, some of our policies have made people who live in Canada feel more vulnerable and not as included. And I would say, as we look into the future, we have to make sure that we address the major challenges that lie ahead of us, and that we don't get into divide and conquer, and we don't get into divisive type of politics. And my personal goal is to be a role model for that young man I met at the airport many years ago, and for other young people here from many other countries, and want to show them that we can do politics the Canadian way, that we can do politics and address all the issues in the spectrum, that we can do politics in a way that is inclusive, that doesn't leave anybody out, but that protects each and every person. Because if we do not, we leave a vacuum for our children who will lose faith in the democratic process. And democracy, parliamentary democracy, has its warts and it has its challenges. But it's because it's the best thing we've got that I feel we all have to work together to ensure that our parliamentary democracy truly remains a representative democracy and truly addresses the needs of its citizens in an inclusive way.